Hello, this is the Ancient and Medieval History Lecture for Monday, the 14th of December, 2020. As I'm making my introductions, the new syllabus is being passed around the classroom. Those of you who are here on B days will get it tomorrow, and everyone else can get it online on the Google Stream, which I posted this morning. Where we left things. Alexander's empire had fallen, and the Diadochi kingdoms ruled the east until the Romans march east and take over. So now, what we're going to look at today and tomorrow is Greek culture. And we're going to be talking about a variety of cultural things relating to Greece. Because that is part of the big legacy that they give us. So, first off, politics. In this society, which is a constitutional federal representative republic, would you mind moving your conical hat so I can see you? You can move it aside. I don't care. You can stand up all bright and tall. I want to be able to see you. Good.
That's going to start falling over.
Oh, that's good. It'll stay. Sooner or later, it'll stay. You can put a water bottle under or something. Okay. But for many reasons, people insist on calling modern liberal societies in Europe, the United States, Australia, New Zealand, and elsewhere democracies. Well, they do so because the people are involved in electing their representative governments. And there is freedom of speech and other things like that. Democracies, demokratia. Demos means people. Kratia means rulership. So a person who is a demographer studies population trends or numbers of people. Demos. Kratia is rulership. So what democracy literally means in the Greek is the rule of the people. And democracy as found in Athens is something we talked about. It involves the participation, the personal participation of citizens, not in just electing their leaders, but in determining policy. Everything from whether or not actors should be allowed to live in the town, or because they're such scum, they should be forced to live in little shanty towns outside, up to whether we should raise or lower taxes and on what, or should we make alliances, or should we go to war. All of these things are discussed, as well as, because there's no separation of legislative and judicial branches, trials. Everything is conducted by variants of the General Assembly, organized by the Council of 500. The Constitution of Solon was about cleaning up corruption, and the Constitution of Cleisthenes brought that direct democracy to Athens, which we talked about with the age of Pericles. Warfare. What I want you to really remember about warfare is the Greek hoplite and the phalanx, which is the formation of Greek hoplites. The idea of slow-moving, tortoise-like armored foot soldiers marching in closed ranks across smooth, open battlefields to fight armies that are similar to them is classical Mediterranean warfare. Roman armies, Carthaginian armies, various Greek armies, all follow this model. Persia, even in its own way, without using the heavy infantry, follows the model of set-piece battles. A set-piece battle is when your army and the enemy army square up against one another and have one of these weird formal battles. It is the opposite way of fighting in Asia, in Africa, in the Americas, where raiding and light forces are prioritized, where there's basically no state of peace, nor is there a state usually of full-out war. Instead, it's just expected that your villages are occasionally going to be raided by your neighbors, and that you're going to occasionally raid their villages, killings, raping, stealing, burning, just, I don't know, to let off steam, or just because that's the way people are. But in the cultured, civilized regions of Eurasia, what you see is set-piece battles with professional armies fighting against professional armies. And the winners of battles between these armies and navies determines who wins the war, and after the war there is a time of actual peace. That actual peacetime is a pretty precious thing, and it's what more savage regions of the world lack until they're contacted by more developed parts of the world. So Greek warfare, heavy infantry, formal set-piece battles, hoplites, phalanxes, and so forth. Do you have any questions before we go into philosophy? As we've talked about politics and war already, I just wanted to remind you. Philosophia, the love of wisdom. The word philo means love. Sophia means wisdom. So if you know of any guys named Philo, which is an old name that Americans were named, at one time anyway, and many times their name means love. Now, Greeks have several words for love. It's not erotic love. It is the love of the mind, the enthusiasm of the mind. Philo. Sophia means wisdom. So if you know of any girls named Sophie or Sophia, their name means wisdom. So the love of wisdom. Now, the first group of philosophers that history talks about were the sophists. And these guys were sort of professional flim-flam men that used philosophy as a way to make a living. Some of them were thought-provoking, some of them were just charlatans. But the sophists would go around from town to town, city to city, like a traveling circus. And they would philosophize. And they would ask questions. And they would twist logic. And what they thought their audiences wanted was logic twisted like a pretzel so that wrong seems right, black seems white, night seems day, and basically logic turned on its head. Why? Because the Greeks find that interesting. Remember, their culture is interested in creativity, intellectualism. The Athenians especially were into chattering at one another. So what if you could make a philosophical logic bomb that proved that war is peace, ignorance is knowledge, and freedom is slavery? Let's do freedom is slavery. Okay, which, by the way, deals with modern communism and totalitarianism, both from George Orwell's book 1984 and also just from dealing with totalitarian communists and police states to this day. How could somebody argue that freedom is slavery? Do any of you want to take a shot? We're here. Yeah.
But I didn't exactly hear the top of the word.
Freedom is slavery. Freedom equates to slavery. Freedom is slavery.
Okay.
Do you want to try it or not? You don't have to.
Sure.
Okay.
Do you want to start?
You go for it.
Okay. I can't start.
That's fine. If you want to break in, just raise your hand. Okay. A free people isn't free. A free individual is always enslaved only by being disciplined, only by accepting an outside objective standard of conduct and of behavior is a person liberated. Because we all have drives, we have lusts, we have sinful natures. This is not merely a Christian point of view. This is a point of view that pagans argued and that some sophists argue. It's a point of view that communists argue today and have for 150 years or more. We, as human beings, have a fallen, flawed human nature. And a human being that is open to just doing what feels good is open to engaging in barbarity, in savageness, in great evil, rape, murder, oppression, putting people in their place, always being right. If a person does not learn to discipline their base nature by aspiring to serve a code of conduct, a code of honor, a code of justice, if a person does not get used to sacrificing their free choice on the altar of self-control, they will never become free. They are slaves to their internal demons. Think about schoolwork. And I'm very aware of this because I've been on both sides of this one. When I was your age and when I was in college, had so many more things that I wanted to do than homework. And so I didn't do much homework. I was a smart guy and I was able to skate through because my schools were mediocre and I was smart enough to get by. So I did a minimum of work and I got into a really good college and I got my butt kicked because I wasn't ready to study. I failed out of college in the last semester of my senior year. It was a battle every semester. I finally lost it. And then after some time of recovery, because there needed to be recovery, I went to night school elsewhere. I got my credits transferred and I got my degree. Then I went to night school again and got my teaching certificate, and the rest, so to speak, is history. But I know what it's like not to be able to force myself to study. I know what it's like not to even want to force myself to study. Temptation is the only battle where if you lose, you have more fun than if you win. Oh, God, it was hard for me to study. I could not have succeeded at the Coeur d'Alene Charter Academy because I could have probably done it in English and history and art, but math and science would have destroyed me. And language. So I speak English and bad English. That's what I speak. I know a few smatterings of other languages, but that's about it. I really could not have handled what you guys are doing. So to the extent you guys are able to be successful, you have my real respect because I couldn't have done it. No way. Because I didn't learn to discipline myself. Only after I failed out of college did I learn. Because at that point I was committed. I needed to. I needed to if I wanted to have the life I wanted. I needed to overcome whatever it was in me that refused to accept the bridle of discipline. So, freedom is slavery is true if you are talking about freedom being an absence of discipline or self discipline or accountability to some objective code of honor. You see how that works? Okay. Now, what I just said is something that's a little clever. The word sophistry is a word that you should learn. Sophistry is Sophistry. Sophistry is Sophistry. Sophistry is Sophistry. And what sophistry means is the use of logic to confuse, the use of logic to say that 2 plus 2 equals 3, the use of logic or the abuse of logic abuse, the use of logic to spread falsehoods. You get the idea? So a clever person might make an argument that's very clever and that might even win debate points. But if they're using logic and reason to defy common sense and objective truth, they're engaged in sophistry. And sophistry is logic abuse. It's a pretty nasty thing to do. Most intelligent people do it at some point in their lives because you got to learn. But the idea is these wise guys would go around and they would make logic pretzels and they'd get paid for it. The sophists. Now, responses to this are important because they deal with the way we take in information from outsiders. And I know I talked about this on Friday, but I'm talking about it again because it's important. One reaction is skepticism. Skepticism is the suspicion that somebody who's telling you something might not be telling the truth. They either might be wrong, but because they were misinformed, or because they came to wrong conclusions, or they might be trying to sell you swampland in Florida. They might be trying to sell you a bill of goods that is false, because for whatever reason, it'll disadvantage you and advantage them. A skeptic is somebody who says, oh, okay, you say it's beautiful weather out. That's great. I'm going to go outside and check. Not because I disbelieve you, but because I make a habit of being skeptical to anyone. If someone tells me something, I owe it to myself to find out. By the way, a healthy skepticism is necessary for an educated person. Like anyone, I like to be believed. But if you hear me argue something that just seems wacky in class, maybe it's because I'm a conservative and I'm blinded by my conservatism. Maybe it's because I'm wrong and I've just come to an erroneous conclusion. I'm a human being. Both things are possible. I try not to do either of those things, but I'm guilty of failing at times. So, what you should always do, and I am going to call on you, is you owe it to yourself to look things up and check yourself. This should be true for anyone. If someone says something that makes you go, huh? Look it up. We have the Library of Alexandria at our fingertips, and only a third of it is devoted to porn. The rest of it, this internet that we have, is filled with possibly good information. Some bad information too, but some good information. Use it. Go to those book houses called libraries and look things up. Get into the habit of researching for yourself, because if you do, you'll be resistant to propaganda. But if you grow into the habit of accepting other people's conclusions because you trust them, that could be trust or it could be laziness. Watch out for laziness, because you could end up accepting something as true because you trust the person who told it to you. And if they're wrong or if they're intentionally misguiding you, you will suffer the consequences of that. You owe it to yourself to be a little skeptical. Thank you for waiting.
So you were talking about the sophists earlier. I'm wondering. I remember learning that this a couple years ago, but it was these people who were essentially traveling teachers.
Yeah.
Or that's what they called themselves. And when other teachers like Socrates, Plato, whatever, start show, they got very mad because they were teaching things that they did not believe in.
Right. The sophists would show up, and Socrates was very clear that he was not a sophist, and he criticized them, and he in his own way called them flim-flam men. Now maybe that's because they disagreed with him, or maybe it's because what they were doing was showmanship. Okay, if I'm a cook and I've got a certain amount of resources and a certain degree of skill, I can use that to create Iron Chef-like recipes, right? For a few people. And the food is not going to be very satisfying, but it's going to be exciting. Or I can create good, wholesome, sticks to your ribs, plain home cooking food. I would like to think that what I would produce is good, plain home cooking food, because my goal is not to excite my listeners. My goal is to nutrify them. My goal is to feed them. It's not about me showing off. It's about using the resources I have to best feed the most people. Do you see the difference there? One is sort of shiny, the other isn't. It's like the difference also between a comedy routine and a lesson of mine. I respect stand-up comedians. I don't think I could do what they do. But what they do and what I do aren't that different. Both are performance arts. Both involve me talking and other people listening. Occasional interactions with the audience. But in general terms, like stand-up comedians, I am trying to keep your attention with the words and only the words that come out of my mouth. My goal is to help you understand your own history so that you can see how the world has come to be the way it is, and so that you can make a purposeful, informed decision about where you want the world to go and then fight for what you believe in. My goal is to help you learn wisdom from folly, and the way you do that is by observing the lives of others and the choices that they make. A comedian's job might be to do that. George Carlin and other comedians are wonderful educators. Bill Cosby, before he became a reprobate criminal, was a great teacher as well as comedian. But their primary job is to make people laugh. And when somebody buys a ticket to a comedy show, they want to be entertained. There's a difference there. Does that make sense? Did that address your question or your comment?
Yeah.
Okay. I see no other hands up, so we will continue. There is another way of reacting that goes beyond the skeptic, and that is the cynic. The cynic has a predisposition to view everything anyone else says with suspicion. Hey, what a beautiful day! The sun is shining. The birds are tweeting. What are you trying to sell me? What are you trying to pull the wool over my eyes? Beautiful day. What's so darn beautiful about it? Let's go see if it's beautiful out. Ha! You said it was sunny. Clouds. Huh? Huh? You said the birds are singing. Yeah, they're singing and they're eating worms. Worms aren't so happy about it, are they? A, a cynic assumes that they are being lied to. Now, cynicism can be a problem for a person because a cynic renders themselves, it's like they're trying to avoid being poisoned so they never eat. They don't want to be poisoned by other people's ideas, so instead of wearing an aluminum foil hat, they just don't believe anyone. They assume that people are BSing them all the time. I've had students that were aspiring cynics that assumed that everything I was teaching them was designed to make them servile to the government. And they learned after a while that if I was trying to make people servile to the government, I'm doing a pretty lousy job of it. But they thought it. They thought school was programming. They, listen to the old Pink Floyd album, The Wall. Watch the disgusting movie made on it. And it's all about how society programs young people to be good little soldiers and good little drones and do what they're told. That is not what I'm about. Believe me or not. A cynic is going to assume that school is propaganda, that the media is lying to them, that everything that's out there as assumed truth in the popular culture is a lie designed to trap the soul. Buddhists appreciate that this world is a trap for the soul. And the way that you avoid it is you disbelieve it. Meditation techniques designed to free your mind from the trap that your senses create, the artificial world that your senses create, lead to a genuine enlightenment, which is the embracing of nothing, of emptiness. If you can free yourself of the constraints of this physical world and the assumptions that the physical world has, then when your body dies, your soul will live on and move on to the next level. You will be enlightened. The movie The Matrix, it's no accident that Keanu Reeves was in it, because Keanu Reeves is a Buddhist. And The Matrix, the original movie, is Buddhism explained with cybernetics. Except instead of it being a world filled with demons of the air trying to trap your soul in a world of lies, it's a robot world designed to, through virtual reality, turn human beings into battery cells. And if you've never seen the original Matrix, it's a darkish movie, but it's a good movie. And in those few years where I've had time to go deeply into Buddhism, I show scenes from it and talk about it. I don't, this year probably won't be, but I recommend that you see it. And if you see it with people who know anything about Buddhism, talk to them about it. Ask them about it. Ask them why there is no spoon is important to Buddhism. Yeah.
Wait, so I'm confused. Does that mean there's another Matrix movie?
The original Matrix movie. The first one.
Okay, but is there another one?
There are 2 sequels.
Oh, okay.
And the sequels are lousy. They don't make any sense. I saw them. I understood what the filmmakers were trying to do. But the truth is, at the end of the first movie, Neo, the character, achieves enlightenment, and you don't need to. He already had won, but they had to make sequels because they wanted to make money, and so they ended up making his victory limited. It didn't make sense. If you want to understand Buddhism, watch The Matrix, and you'll get a sense of how Buddhists see the world. In any event, a cynic traps themselves in their own suspicion and renders himself incapable of trust. Now, this is like a person who refuses to ever fall in love, because if you fall in love, you will be hurt. There's no way around it. It's the opposite side of the coin, and you will be betrayed. It will happen. It will hurt. So what's the answer? Never to allow yourself to love, to live a barren life, bereft of love? No. The answer is toughen up, Buttercup, and understand that the real world is a world that includes a lot of pain. And that pain can be useful and can teach you things. That pain can save you. It can make you a better person. Pain is not always something that you need to avoid. Pain can be the best teacher because it reminds you why it's important to learn a particular lesson. Cynicism is all too prevalent today. but it's lazy and it's easy. By assuming that everyone that has anything to say is lying to you, you are assuming that you don't need to pay attention to anyone because they're full of BS. So you just go through life proudly not listening to anyone. Are you ever going to have a friend? Are you ever going to trust someone? Are you ever going to be worthy of trust yourself? Because if you're not willing to give trust, why on earth would people expect you to trust? Why would anybody trust you if you're not willing to trust them? So beware of cynicism, but embrace a healthy skepticism is my advice. Take it or leave it. Now we go to Mr. Socrates, who appeared in that movie Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure as Socrates. It's like a drill in my head. Okay, Socrates. Socrates is the first of the three great Greek philosophers, followed by Plato and Aristotle. But Socrates is not primarily a writer, nor is he by profession a philosopher. Socrates is a teacher. Socrates' job is to teach, and he goes to the agora and he teaches, he talks, he explains. Socrates, in his teaching, asks people leading questions. It's not my way of teaching, but I've seen some people do it to great effect. A lot of history teachers do it to see if you've done your homework. Because Socrates lived in what city? And basically everyone's going, oh my God, please don't pick me. Please don't pick me. I'm just going to say Athens. And if you say Athens, right, Athens. I had history teachers like that. Drove me freaking nuts. I hated it because I felt constantly on display, and like any moment I could make a fool of myself. I really didn't like it. But some teachers get really good results with that. Socrates would ask questions like, for example, is lying wrong? And most people would reflectively and instinctively say, darn right, lying is wrong. When you lie, you murder a part of the universe. When you lie, you mislead. The one thing we have among each other is trust, and you're betraying that trust by speaking falsehood. Oh yeah, Socrates says. Well, consider this situation. A father learns that his son has a terminal illness. And that terminal illness is only treatable by the taking of very unpleasant herbs. There are side effects, and the herbs taste bad, and the son refuses to take them. He says, I'd rather lead a short life than lead a longer life taking these herbs. So the father searches for a cook who can make food spicy enough to conceal the herbs. And that cook starts cooking for the family. And the son, who's not stupid, suddenly realizes we're eating very different types of food, much more spicy. And he looks Dad in the eye and he says, Father, there isn't those herbs in this food, is there? The food that we're eating does not contain the herbs, does it? You got to be honest with me. I'm looking you in the eye. You got to tell me the truth. I'm trusting you. And the father looks him in the eye and says with all the sincerity he can muster, of course they're not. I honor your choice. I just wanted to try a different kind of food, and this cook's food seems incredible to me, and I want you to share in it. No, son, I've honored your choice. Of course there's no herbs in the food. Liar! But why is he lying? For what reason is the father lying?
It's to get him to eat the herb.
Yeah.
In a way that he would actually, well, he would do it without really knowing that he would also be able
to save his son's life. Because his son's a lunkhead. But he loves him. I'm just going to lead a shorter life. Shut up! Take your damn medicine. Yes.
I'm just gonna say the argument is similar to like the anti-vaccine argument. Simply, don't take the medicine if you that's just gonna cause more pain or whatever. what the kid essentially thinks is that if he has to eat these things, he doesn't like eating them. It's fine if he doesn't eat them because if he does that, he'll just live a shorter life, but he won't have to take something that he doesn't like.
Yeah.
The father, not only is he holding a sense of authority over his child, he's like making sure that his child does not die young from being stupid.
Yeah.
But he has a sense of authority over him that he's establishing within this moment. Even if he's lying to him in the long run, he's establishing his authority over his child and making sure that his child does not do something stupid that could end up killing him.
Indeed, and that relationship justifies it. You don't necessarily have the right to do that with a total stranger, especially if you are an adult and they're an adult. But if it's your son or somebody like that, yeah, the family bond gives you an entree into that, gives you sort of the right to play God and get involved. As to the vaxxer thing, I got to tell you, I don't agree at all that vaccinations are a bad thing. But I do agree that the sort of super shots that they give people these days are bad. When I was young, got a series of shots over a several-year period when I was a little boy because that's the way you protected your kid. These days, they do it all in 1 or 2 shots, and I am convinced that it is those super shots that may cause problems. But other than that, I have no problem. Vaccinations, to me, make an awful lot of sense. I'll go doop and doop. You haven't said anything.
Yeah, so I think like people should have a choice. Like you can't just be like, oh, you have to take this. Like if there's measles out, you gotta take the shot. Like families should have choices over what they want to take and what.
Yes, that's true. Look,
I've taken vaccines. I don't have a problem with them normally. But if there's something to me that's morally wrong about it, I'm not gonna take it.
Right. Look, and parents do have a right to make decisions for their children in that regard. If the best time to get a certain shot is when you're 6 months old, then mom and dad have to make that choice. They're not going to wait until you get old enough to be informed. As long as you accept that as part of the deal, I agree with you. And I think that some people will refuse treatment. We have a legal right in this country to refuse treatment. I was very aware of that when I was working with the developmentally disabled. If they made a consistent no, despite the fact that they need this med, you're supposed to honor it. That's really hard, by the way. But, yeah, so is lying always evil? And what Socrates was trying to say is no, life is complex. And there are times when, if you love someone, you will lie to them. Honey, does this dress make my butt look big? Oh, men, you will lie! And you will not say the words of the comedian, no, honey, your butt makes your butt look big. No, you don't say that, ever. Because if you do, what you're really saying is, honey, I want to break up with you right now, and I want you to hate me for the rest of your natural life. Don't do that. Be honest, by the way, and if something's unflattering, and it's not easy as a husband to say this, and I've been with my wife since January of '85. We've been together. But she'll ask my opinion. I'll ask her opinion. And if we don't agree, we got to say, look, it's not flattering. Don't. If I was you, I wouldn't wear that. And every couple of months, we come up to one of those. But that's better than going out in public and having people go, God, so why are they wearing that? You're supposed to help watch your back, the back of the person you love. Did you have something?
Keep my friends.
Okay.
And also, like, if you have a really strong relationship with someone, like, then you can be honest and, like, say it nicely. If you're, like, just met each other, then, for one, you shouldn't ask questions that you don't want to hear the answer to.
Exactly.
And for two, like, if your relationship is super fragile, you got to be really careful what you say.
Yeah, and you also have to wonder if you've been together for a while and it's super fragile, is it for a noble reason that they have a death in the family or something? Or is it just that your relationship fundamentally has some flaws that aren't going to be fixed, at which point maybe you want to reevaluate the whole thing. But yeah, every relationship has its weak moments. Every relationship has its bad points. But I have found, for what it's worth, being honest is almost always the right thing to do. Just be honest kindly. Don't be a jerk. Don't score points off the person you love. Don't make them feel like a failure or an idiot. Don't ever do that. There's no reason ever to do that. I don't think. In any event, so the Socratic method is teaching through asking questions. My favorite quote, and the basis of all the other quotes up here, is an unexamined life is not worth living. Socrates asserts that it is our duty as living, thinking beings to think about the world around us. to ask questions, not to accept things as assumptions, to be skeptical, not cynical, but skeptical. Okay, we have the patriotic gods. We have Athena and the others. Let's look at this. Let's think about this. In Christianity, St. Paul says that one of the things you're supposed to do is worship God with your whole heart and your whole mind. This is where theology comes from. Christians are not supposed to blindly accept dogma and like, no, Christians are supposed to think about things and be courageous enough to trust that maybe the answer won't be God doesn't exist. Maybe they will further deepen their faith by asking questions. Now, a lot of denominations don't do this. A lot of denominations seem to try to instill fear in their flocks. I have never agreed with that. A Christian and a Greek, according to Socrates, you think about your faith. You ask questions about it. Maybe these questions offend people. Maybe they are obnoxious to people. Too bad! You've got to figure out life yourself. That's your job. You are given life to figure it out, at least to some extent. That's why you're here, Socrates says. And if you don't do that, why are you even alive? Okay, that's fine. So an unexamined life is not worth living. You know what Socrates does? He really irritates a whole bunch of Athenians. And they don't like him. They say he's corrupting the minds of the young. He is abusing his authority as a teacher to brainwash his students, to turn them into little Socrates. And the detail they give is what he just said about the patriotic gods. You don't question the gods. You have faith in the gods. If you question the gods, you're engaged in almost treasonable behavior, as well as apostasy, which is what happens when you're of the faith and then turn against it. Socrates argues he's not trying to steer people away from faith. He's trying to argue against blind faith. There's a difference. Blind faith, you wear blinders on, and you don't look at anything that might disturb your faith, which means your faith is pretty darn fragile. You should be gutsy enough and trust the gods enough to question things. Because the gods themselves encourage this. Remember, Odysseus is respected by many gods because he thinks. And a person who is willing to put their faith and put something on the line is being courageous with their faith. Yes.
Although some of the gods do encourage like testing their faith, like being smart about it, some of the gods.
Oh, some of the gods don't
some
like.
Some of the gods are very fragile. Zeus in particular, he's very fragile.
Yes.
And like a lot of the higher rulers, they're very fragile. So maybe the fear of like accidentally pissing off a god is what really keeps them from speaking out.
Yes.
Out of like literally.
Yeah, but Socrates is not going to be silent. Now, I'll tell you. Before his trial, Socrates is given an option. Shut up! Just shut up! Talk about these things. Fine. But don't question the gods and don't poison the minds of the youth. To which Socrates says, I'm doing my job. I'm a teacher. I'm here to try to get people to think for themselves. I'm not going to stop teaching. At which point the critics are saying, fine, you're an honored man. You won't have trouble making a living anywhere else in the Greek world. Leave. Go somewhere else. Do your thing somewhere else, outside and away from Athens. And Socrates says, no, I'm an Athenian. This is my home. I'm not going to get ostracized by a bunch of malcontent, closed-minded bigots. I'm staying. You want to put me on trial? Take your best shot. I am teaching the way I am inspired to teach. I am acting from a basis of conscience, and if you don't like it, too bad. They put him on trial. They convict him. He is going to be executed, but he is given a chance to depart the world on his own terms. Socrates accepts. He goes to his villa. He calls a big party, invites everyone that's important to him. They drink, they laugh, they talk, they tell stories, and at the high point of the party, Socrates drinks hemlock, which is poison, and dies. Socrates is a martyr for the truth, And Socrates is someone who dies because he will not say 2 plus 2 is 3, despite the fact that a person of power with swords at his throat demands that he say 2 plus 2 is 3. He's not going to leave, he's not going to teach falsehood, and he's not going to limit his teaching. That is integrity. And if you admire nothing else about Socrates, he was willing to die to keep his integrity. I consider that very admirable. Now, one of his students and an admirer is Plato. Plato is the first real philosopher of the lot, in that Plato writes. He sets up an academy, but Plato primarily is engaged with thinking about the world, which is what philosophy is. Philosophy is, if you don't have this from your notes on Friday, thinking about the world. It's metacognition, thinking about the world. First of all, Plato says we are not in the real world. We are not. This is not the real world. Because reality is composed of archetypes. Now, an archetype, and that word is in your notes, is something's perfect form. Somewhere in the universe there is a perfect chair, a perfect set of eyeglasses, a perfect wedding ring, perfect tie, perfect ID, perfect pen. Somewhere in the world is a perfect version of you, with all of your virtues and none of your vices, with all of your strengths and none of your flaws. The perfect world, the real world, is a world where perfect forms interact with other perfect forms, where archetypes interact with other archetypes. We are like the shadows on the wall of a cave. We are an echo of that real world. Our world is flawed. Our world is decayed. We are like a carnival mirror world. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. You know those carnival mirrors that make you look really fat or really thin? Well, that's our world. We live in a distorted reality, a reality of old age, premature death, pain, needless suffering and pain. That's our world. The only way we're going to encounter truth is through the mind's eye, by focusing on and imagining what archetypes would be like and how perfect forms would interact with one another, and those meditations can lead us to the truth. He writes a book, Republic, which is about an ideal society where the philosophers are king, because they alone understand the outcomes of choices, the consequences of choices. Where people who are naturally not very brainy but are very brawny work. Where people who are naturally brainy but not very brawny are administrators. Where the people who are capable of really intuiting what the consequences of choices are, they are the philosopher kings. That is Republic, Plato's Republic. It's different from the Roman Republic and the American Republic. It is a perfected society, a perfect form. And I just realized I didn't close my quotations. Got to close your quotations. Otherwise, all of this is part of Plato's Republic. So, Plato, perfect forms, interacting, that's the real world. Archetypes are perfect forms. And that the Republic is his perfected society. We will continue with Aristotle next time. Now, I will tell you, the next lecture is the last lecture. We will get through as much of this as we can. The unit exam, which you'll take on Wednesday, or Thursday for you B-Day people, and for those of you at home, is on everything regarding ancient Greece up to the end of my notes. Study the notes you've taken on my lectures. If we don't get to certain things in literature or sport or whatever, history, look them up just to have a passing familiarity with what the names are, what they're famous for. You have your new syllabus. And what this means is that after Christmas break, we're going to start on Unit 3, which is the Roman Republic, Christianity, and the Roman Empire. Any questions? Thank you for your participation. Yes, Zoe?
Will we be allowed to do corrections for the exam?
I'm going to try to make it possible, yes. I'm going to be trusting you, but I'm going to try to make it possible. Yes, definitely.
Because I already did one for the Unit 1.
Yeah, and you've gotten credit for it, right?
No, I didn't turn it in.
Turn it in!
I wasn't sure whether
Turn it in now! Turn it in. Turn in anything that you have done. And remember, this Wednesday is also the day I expect, if any of you have done the case study stuff, for that to be turned in. So, thank you for your attention. Make sure that's in the shelf. And for you at home, see you next time.